Hey everyone, this is Cindy at an open door. It is Friday, January 24th, and this is the hour that we've set aside where we intend a direct experience of who we are while hanging out with Helen Hamilton and Reality Check. I have an 11-minute clip from Helen that's about a year old, and we'll begin there. And then we'll have whatever conversation is alive in us to have. And then, as time permits, we'll read however many words um, is in our desire to read. So let's start with this 11-minute clip, unless anyone wants to say anything before we begin. All right, here we go.
When you're ready.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
When I meet with somebody, I choose to be open with them. I choose to share what I'm feeling and thinking openly and to connect with that person. But sometimes the person I'm talking to does not like what I'm saying or does not accept me. And then there's a feeling of hurt that arises. And then there's a tendency on my part to sort of want to withdraw, to not be so open the next time. And I know that intellectually, if I accept everyone and everything, then there is no hurt. But still, this pattern continues. How should I deal with it?
Let me ask you this first. How do you know that some people don't accept you or like you?
Well, I'm interpreting that because of how they're responding to what I'm saying.
So let's be clear then that they don't like what you're saying rather than your mind is automatically assuming that they don't like you because the separate sense of someone is it takes ownership of thoughts, words, and actions, so that if you disagree with something I'm saying, it feels like you're disagreeing with me. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that. So I'm interpreting their disagreement with what I'm saying as a non-acceptance or rejection of myself personally. Is that correct?
Yeah. So once you see that, it becomes easier in itself. It's like, okay, maybe it's actually just a difference of opinion here. Everyone's got their own perspective, etc. But taking it one step further than that, if you want to, is if I think they don't like me, then it can only be a reflection of the fact that I don't like me. Because that person that I think is rejecting me is me. And they're showing me that I still, on some level at least, don't like myself. It's not an easy one to accept. But if you can bring a willingness to, could I still be rejecting my own self somewhere inside? Out of habit, of course, but a prevalent habit nonetheless that we all have.
Yeah, I can see that, Helen, and I'm aware of that, and I've worked with that because I'm aware of that pattern that I don't like myself. So, but pattern that I don't like myself. So, but
Have you ever met yourself?
have I ever met myself? Meaning?
Have you ever actually just experienced you without thinking about you?
I mean, look, as you're saying this, I'm getting the image of, like the Louise Hay practice where you look at yourself in the mirror and saying, I love you. Is that's what's coming up in my mind as you say this.
And let's be maybe it'd be easy to say when I was at this point in my own awakening, I realized I had all these negative opinions. On the best day, I just slightly disliked myself. On the worst day, I absolutely hated myself. And I was so convinced that that was true, that what I thought was true. And it was actually quite shocking to realize that all of my evidence, the fact that I wasn't good enough, wasn't likable, etc., was from what I think about myself. And that I'd never actually looked at myself without the filter of thoughts and mind. So this powerful question came, what do I actually know about myself if I don't think? If I don't, of course, mind might be thinking, but if I don't use thoughts as a reference point and the resulting emotions that come from those thoughts. So I'll ask you this, what do you actually know about yourself if you don't think about yourself?
Nothing.
So do you still dislike yourself? Then can you dislike yourself? From there.
No, I can't dislike myself if I'm nothing.
And what does happen if you don't know anything about yourself at all? How do you feel then?
Peaceful, relaxing.
Yeah. So can you see now maybe clearer what I mean when I say you've never really met yourself without looking through the mind at yourself?
I've never met myself without thoughts.
Yeah. And who are you without those thoughts? If those thoughts aren't used as a and the resulting experiences, the reflections in other people, like we started this with. If I don't count the experiences I've had, which have all been reflections of what I think about myself, and I don't look through the mind just for a moment, and I actually ask, who am I, without any thought being used as evidence or whatever. We come to this
Without
stunning
thoughts, I'm just
flip.
space.
Say again, sorry.
Without thoughts, I'm just space. I'm just openness.
Yeah. And do you like yourself like that?
Yes, it feels good.
Anything to improve there?
Not really.
Not at all, right? You've been amazingly brave here, and I'm sure you're helping absolutely everyone right now here by bringing this up. So it's just to be honest, right? I don't actually know myself. I've never met myself consistently without looking through the mind. And what's it like when I don't do that? Even now, let's take it one step further. Just look at your mind and body as they actually are without looking through the filter of mind. This is just a body here, right? There's just a body. And there's thoughts.
Yeah. It's just a body.
Yeah.
Just space.
Nothing to dislike there either, is there?
That's true.
So it's your choice then now. Now that you know you haven't really met yourself and your mind isn't, well, you have met yourself now, but your mind isn't the best and most reliable opinion to consult about whether you're good enough or not. That's all we're saying, isn't it? Your mind can't really see clearly, but you can.
Yes.
So you value this more than other people's opinions, which are echoes of what mind thinks. You value this more. You meet yourself directly. You value that more than you value your mind's opinions. Don't make the mind wrong. Just, okay, I can see it. Every time I look through that mechanism, it's always going to look like I need to improve myself.
Yeah, this feels better.
And the more you do it, the more you fall utterly in love with yourself. Utterly besotted, obsessed. And, not in an ego way, but just, wow, there's never been anything really that I needed to fix about me. And then other people have to begin to reflect that to you instead of reflecting what your mind thinks.
I would like to add one thing, Helen. What I just asked you, I asked this because in the Sangha a few hours ago, one of the other members asked me to ask you this question, and I wasn't that keen to ask. But what I'm feeling right now, what we did in this Sangha was something from your website about there's only one questioner, there's only one answer, there are not separate questioners. And so this person asked me to ask this question, which is also my question and is everyone's question. So I think how you've just responded and what's just happened now is a perfect example of
There's the oneness.
There's just the oneness there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can tell from my answer that I've had to do this too, We all spend as long as we spend trying to fix ourselves from some wrong image that comes through perceiving ourselves through the mind. And mind's never going to be able to see you clearly. Only you can. So as you get that, it becomes a simple choice of if I'm suffering, I'm looking through the mind right now at something, at myself or someone else. If I'm not suffering, I'm just actually directly being with myself.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you for asking that.
Thoughts, comments? Anyone want to say anything at all before we move to the book?
I just have a question. In the replay, will that video be in the replay? Okay. I loved it.
Me
Is it-
too.
Yeah, I think in this group a week or two ago, I can't remember who said it, but they said the very most important thing is to fall in love with ourselves. And it seems like that's what she's saying. And what a powerful pointer that was to when we put the mind aside and we see that and we ask who we are and we know we're nothing, then this love just automatically starts flowing. And I wanted to share, I think I shared on Wednesday that I was in the Angelo Delulu retreat last week, and on myself on the last night of the retreat, I went to bed and I was feeling anxious about something. And all of a sudden the question popped into my, who is it that is anxious? And that's the first time I have clearly asked myself that question in a deep way. And I think Cindy, you asked that of Rana when she called you. If I heard that correctly, who is it that was feeling the way she
Well,
was
actually,
feeling?
yeah, it was a different question. that
Right, a
arose
different
to answer.
question.
It was
Right.
whose voice is that?
Right. And I am finding that to be the most powerful pointer yet I've ever gotten to getting to the nothingness of who I am. And I'm loving this. I'm, remembering to ask myself anytime I'm feeling anything less than love, who is it that is feeling this? And that who that's feeling it isn't there. It's just simply not there. Anyway, thanks.
I love how you pointed to the importance, that the question arose spontaneously from you showing up to do the work. So it wasn't your small self that asking the question. And also that how important it is to ask the question and look and not just assume that you know the answer. The
Right.
deep,
Yeah, we have to ask it at a deeper level, you know, it's not some superficial question. Yeah.
is there any other sharing or are we going to read? Shall I? Hopefully someone knows exactly where we're going to begin. Keep setting the intention, or there's the intention to like highlight the point that we end, and then I don't. Um, I don't even know I don't until I screen share again. So the page that the book is on. Does anyone know within this page where we're going to begin?
Page 27,
Well,
and
that's in the
even to
PDF.
say,
That's last week we learned that 27 is in the hardcover, not in my Kindle.
oh, well, we left off in the paragraph that says, even to say you will have to choose is not really true,
Yep. So
which is
that's
right
page
there. That's, yeah, it's right.
22 in the Kindle. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right, Sandra. Thank you, Amy, and it's good to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I wasn't sure, so. All right, Sandra, it's all yours, and everybody knows the rule is anyone can stop the reading at any time. Yeah.
Before I read, I just wanted to say that that video, I had that experience just yesterday. I've been doing this work for a long time, and I was just coasting along very nicely. And then I had a mind attack just yesterday, so it was so perfect. And then she said, this question is for everybody.
Mhm.
So we start with even to say, that's where I'm starting.
Yes.
Even to say you will have to choose is not really true, because as you continue to read and digest what you learn in this book, you will come to see that this has always been so. So what is actually happening then? Why do we keep imagining that all these other beings or objects exist in addition to us? It is really due to one simple error in our thinking process. We treat this subjective awareness as if it were an object, and we give it the properties of an object. We believe that the subjective self is displaced, moved, or replaced by an object. Because we believe that it must be one or the other, subjective self or object, we feel that when we see an object, it must have taken the place of the subjective awareness or pushed it out of the way. We must come to see that the self is subjective and has no definable qualities like an object does. It is not hard or soft, long or short, big or small. The self has no edges that would push up against an object. If we take an example of empty space and put a cup in that space, have we moved or displaced the space? No, we haven't at all. Formless awareness does not have anything tangible about it to shove up against, and not even an atomic bomb or hurricane could cause the formlessness to move out of the way to allow space for an object to occupy that space. Formlessness is infinite and in all places at all times. And so where would it go anyway if it were moved? Can you move something that is already everywhere and not able to be nowhere? Deeply contemplating the truths you have read here will allow you to begin to live from them and as them. You must keep interested in this subject until you are convinced that what you read is true and you can prove it to your own self in your experience. You cannot prove this is true to anyone else, and you do not need to. Once you are convinced of this, you will feel at peace and you will directly experience reality for the first time. It seems like we should stop there.
Okay.
When I was, the first few sentences, I did not understand at all. And yet, as she went on, I began to understand.
Ron, are you there?
I am.
Ron and I were talking about a mind at home with itself. We were in a chapter about the space between thoughts. Do you remember what Byron Katie said about zero? Because that's what was coming up for me as I was listening to those first few sentences.
I think I have it right here. Would you like me to read it?
I would love for you to read it.
There's only one. You can't have a zero. A zero is actually a one imagining a zero. Only a something could think of nothing.
Yeah. I am having animals playing with each other all around my space. So if you see me like this, it's literally because they're learning how to live together. But to me, that's what was coming up. As soon as we start speaking about something outside of what we think we are, then we've given who we are form, an object. The subject becomes an object. We've separated who we are from whatever it is we're interacting with. That's what was coming up for me as I was in this, in everything you were reading.
I started looking at this cup. It says the cup in space, can it displace the space? No, the space is still here and the space is in the cup too. So what I got from this was that I am everywhere. I am the space. And what she was saying, as soon as we start naming things as other than me, that's when I'm becoming dualistic. So I have to realize that I am everything. Everything that I'm looking at right now in all this space, including the cup, the plant, the book, none of it displaces, is what she's saying. It doesn't displace me. I'm all of it. And if I walk, she said, and at the end when she was saying, if you keep contemplating this, if I walk through life looking at everything, knowing that none of it is displacing me, all that is, then I will have direct experiences of it. Is that right? That's what
Well, should we see what Amy has to say?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here with you as always. It's my happy place. I would say yes to Sandra, what you just said, and I want to just give a shout out to Izzy for sharing her experience, because that's really truly a profound recognition. And that is the key to the door of happiness. And the thing that, for me, this in my experience, I have to come back to it over and over and over again. It's not as though it happens once and then everything's okay. And the egoic mind will often tell me, see, this isn't really working. This is just another tool that you've dreamed up. And it's true that there are times like what Izzy described, the freshness of that realization that who is thinking these who is thinking these thoughts? Who is telling who that these negative thoughts are true, and who is believing them? The freshness of that can wear off. When you first realize it, it's like a blast of light through your mind. And then we just have to keep doing it over and over again. And so this video we just watched of Helen, I am just loving her as a teacher. And the question, asking the mind, or the understanding, asking the mind, who am I? Wow, that was such a new way of doing this. It's really, really lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Cindy. The mind is not the best tool for anything, really.
I'm actually, when that happens and I see it's the mind, I go, I don't have to listen to you anymore.
Oh,
You used to be in charge, but I'm not listening to you anymore.
Rhonda.
I use the phrase, thanks for sharing. You know, this is a great discussion. It brings me back to a sentence from a couple of pages earlier where it says, can you be the infinite self and go on forever, but have a lot of holes where the objects of your perception are? Is there a gap where your brother is, or where the cup is, or where any object is? Is there a gap? Is it separate? And the answer to that is no, because it wouldn't be infinite then. You know, and so there's this idea about the edges were mentioned again. And Livy and Cindy and I had a great experience the other day looking for edge, you know, when we were talking about wearing a shirt, and where does the body meet the shirt, and where is that edge? And it's kind of the same thing, that it's only the body's eyes that are perceiving edges. There aren't really edges there, is the sense that I'm getting now. No gaps, no edges. Thanks.
Thank you. Olga.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say this picture of the mind doing stuff you don't want to do. I was sitting in meditation once, and I had this picture of a dome like this and an ice cube on top. And that's what I find the mind is. It's just slipping around everywhere. You can't keep it still. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Just slipping around out of control.
And as Richard unmutes, another thing that Helen said is you have to discover this for yourself. In a Joel Goldsmith audio some of us were listening to last night, he said one of the laws of spirituality is secrecy. And I equate what he was sharing to that. We have to, and also to what Izzy said, we have to know it for ourselves. And every moment we're feeling like we have to share what we know with another. We have to convince them of the truth. We're projecting out our own work, right? So Joel Goldsmith called it the spiritual law of secrecy. And I heard, you know, she clearly was stating you have to discover this for yourself. Nobody can help you with this. And it's so important, right? Us doing this together is critical to what's happening. But if we don't take it back into our own experience, it really doesn't go anywhere. And now I'll hand it to you, Richard.
Morning, everyone. Great subject. My eyes seem to be moving into where William talked about. In the present moment, everything just appears in my awareness as it is. And the only time I exercise the mind is if I start asking myself a question. Where did that come from? Why am I feeling this? Why am I experiencing this? And that gets me all wrapped up in this episode. But if I just relax and say, this is what's happening now in this moment, I'm okay. So I think that's what she's talking about. But love you all. Glad to be here.
Love you too. I am inspired to read something that I didn't understand that came up in what I was reading this morning before I hand it back to Sandra or whatever else. And this is the way, unless, William, do you want to speak first or do I read this first?
Oh, let me just real quick, because I get confused. Is it my mind? Is it really, really whoever I am? And so, just like this morning, I felt such, oh, I hear Rona's voice. Wow, the surgery must have worked, or she sounds so good. And such relief. And now, is it my thoughts? Is that me? I don't know. I know it's the oneness too. So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
All right, there's a lot of this that I was reading, but I'm just going to read a couple of these lines. So know that it's in the middle of something else. It goes like this. Now, everything is God already, and the utilization of the body as participatory to this engagement is resurrection. The body itself becomes the manifestation of the divine at the level of coherence, that it is known in participation to its landscape, as God knows God, as God knows God in all things. It is not that you become the tree, Paul, because he is asking us to channel. It is not because you become the ocean. It is because you are already these things. Do you understand this? You are the sea and the sky and the earth and the man dying on the other side of this planet. You are the child being born. You are death itself and life itself, because the eternity of being is known as broadcast in coherence to this majesty that is life itself. It is not that the individuated self is extinguished. The individuated self is expressed as all. For me, it's the same teaching.
Yes.
We dissolve the subjective. If we're looking at an object as it is outside of ourselves, then who we are becomes an object in the experience. If we're simply experiencing without describing the experiences too, then it's just the flow. At least that's the way it's alive here now. Even as the sense of a body is being kicked up and disturbed, which gets to be held within this. Yeah. Thank you for letting me read that out loud. Is there more, or do we end the chapter?
I thought that was very helpful. And what came into my mind, if I am the sea and I am the ocean and I am the sky and I am the cup and I am the desk, I'm everything, well, I am the body too. And this, I used to get confused by that. I am not the body. I'm not the body. It's just that I'm not only the body. And I'm not, it's just a different way of looking at the body.
And it's really cool. This particular section is the guide's invitation to dissolve the fear of death. Because what is it that dies? So it's a larger teaching, but within that, there's this recognition of the eternal nature of the divine self. And the fear of death comes from identifying as an object within the experience of the all. And when that objective identification dissolves, so does the fear of ending something, because it's not an end. It's just a flow into a new experience.
That's beautiful.
Marana,
Yes, I am still here.
how cool is that?
I know. Can you move something that is already everywhere and not able to be nowhere? That really gets the juices flowing
Yes.
because it's everywhere. I accept that. It may be a sort of a point of view thing in the beginning when I was first introduced to this as a concept or an idea. But I have had the direct experience of feeling as if there are no edges, no boundaries, and I go on forever. I've had that experience, even though it's been a quick glimpse or so. I don't walk around like that all the time, but it's always available to just take a moment and sink back into that. So thank you.
I was in conversation with somebody I love this morning, who I am relationship with in a similar way that I'm in a relationship with a lot of you. Someone I've known for a really long time, but we don't walk the same part of the world, right? And this individual was in the middle of a midnight or middle of the night fear attack, and there was this fear of death. And it was extraordinary that I was having this conversation today as I'm sitting in this teaching. But the thought came, how would Cindy know that I'm dead? And it was such an interesting viewpoint. This is a conversation after the fact. But if all of this is true, then if this body lets go, so does its world. Yeah, it's so interesting how the mind works, because the other aspect, a number of years ago, this person's not really in my life anymore, but this being who I also adored was going through a really, really, really bad space and kept saying things like, I would kill myself, but then who would take care of my cats? And that's a similar kind of it's just this space of looking at where does a thought like that come from? What does it mean, in the context of this conversation, not in, yeah. Pat.
Hi, this is amazing. So this practice of looking for the edges is something that I find myself doing a lot. And it's really a wonderful feeling to just say, where is the edge? And you never find it. That's the great thing about it. But the thing that I mean, Helen is so fantastic. She's like, this thing she said, the separate sense of someone. So it's this idea that there's a separate someone who is me. When taking that idea, it's just an idea, and laying it next to the fact that I can't find the edge, guess what wins? There's no, the separate sense of someone is the maybe the cause of all suffering, is one way to put it. Because another thing she said was, there's never been anything really to fix about me. If I'm suffering, I'm looking through the mind, and the mind is the thing that creates this idea of a separate sense of someone. And I suppose that the thing that most people do is like cling to that. I'm this someone and I've got to defend my boundaries. But once you look and you can't find the edge, that idea has nothing to stand on anymore. And it's fine just to let go of that idea of separate sense of someone. And that ties into what you were saying, Cindy, about, I mean, who's going to die if there's no separate someone?
Well, I can also tell you, like, after that experience that we had here last week, from a very, very practical standpoint, I want to even say it was the same day. There was something that I needed to do, and I didn't want to do it. There was a fear response, right? And what I found myself doing, and I've done it more than once, but then I forgot. So thank you for bringing it back, Ron. I think you were talking about the edges. I stood by my counter and moved into that place of looking for where the shirt and my skin connected. And I got myself anchored in that experience of not finding it. It was very quiet though, just that space of literally taking all of my attention to the inquiry of the edge between the shirt and the skin. For me, that's a beautiful demonstration that I could do whenever I'm wearing a shirt. And from that place, I extended out and holding the awareness of the lack of the edge, I easily did that thing that had frightened the character a minute before. I did it in the space while holding the looking for the edge. It was extraordinary. And then, of course, the mind had me forget until right now. There was a thought, oh, I can live my life like this. Whatever needs to be done, that seems to be hard or impossible, just find the lack of the edge, almost like be in that space and then allow life to flow through it. Except that Helen is a beautiful example of someone that reminds us, well, just when you notice you've forgotten to, just keep coming back to it, because until right now, I realized I let that practice go. So I'm setting the intention to bring it back. Hey, William.
Well, what's coming to me now as you talk about the edge, I'm not seeing so much the edge as the confusion and no confusion of the meeting. It's like it doesn't really matter whether it's a thought coming from mine or wherever. It's like in that moment. And it seems like being awareness is the moment, and it's an inclusive of the moment. So it's almost like the both and where they meet. And I'm just feeling that I spend so much time, is it this, separating, when in fact, it really doesn't matter. It's all one, this moment. And just the awareness reminds me, just let go, just be awareness. And it doesn't, what I thought was important, it's okay. So in a way, just loving this moment of awareness. And it's almost like so redundant, and it's the same thing. So I just love this feeling. And I don't even care how this comes across. That to me is secrecy too. Almost like sacredcy as well as secrecy. So that's what comes up now. Thank you.
And just as you were saying that, in the same reading that I did this morning, it was pointed out by the guides that the only moment anyone could ever experience eternity is this one. Which is what I heard in your share, William. Hey, Amy. Sandra. I don't know why Amy's down there. Sandra.
As we're talking, I've been thinking about, it feels a strong urge to share that when I first started having these experiences, it felt very clear to me that I was merging with my children. It wasn't just subject and object, it was person to person. Where does one person end and another begin? And yet I recognized that I had this very strong, very solid conditioning that I was a woman, the woman versus man conditioning. And so I started trying to let go of the edges. I didn't use those words because I didn't know them at the time. I didn't know any of these words, but I was looking at my husband differently and thinking, well, what if I'm also a man? I'm not just this body, I'm also him. And as I did that, our relationship changed completely because I was no longer. So I think this is true of any identification. But for me, the identification as a woman was so strong. You know, I grew up in the 60s with women's liberation and, you know, burn your bras, all of that. But that was solidified through the decades. So when she says the subject and the objects must be the same if they're in the same place, if we must all be the same, what doesn't that like? I guess this is coming up because of the state of the world right now, and the, you know, the racism, the misogyny. When we're all the same, we're all the same. When we really start to experience that, it just completely changes the world. Not just know it. Knowing it's one thing. I think I knew a lot of things, you know, but just really being. I mean, we were talking yesterday about Craig saying he got into the mind of the otter. Well, that's the same thing with us as, you know, human to human. That's all.
Fitting into the mind of these animals. She's purring and she's fully present. She knows where the other animals are.
So,
Hey,
so
Pat.
all these identifications with the body, I think for me, in this particular form, the strongest identification was as a woman, as a female. And it was, I'm glad that my eyes were open to that, so I could see that.
And it doesn't, I can tell I'm using those. It doesn't say I'm not a woman. It just, you get to celebrate the womanhood.
Yes,
It's just,
yeah. But not in opposition to something
right.
anymore. That's the difference. No longer in opposition to anything or anyone.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think we what Sandra was saying about that, I've been feeling that too, that, you know, just that's part of letting go of the edges is, you know, whoever this is that I'm interacting with, the edges are gone. They're, how beautifully Helen put it just now, you know, if this is what you see, that you're thinking that this person doesn't like you, then they're you and it's you not liking you. So then I from the last week of what Helen said, just it struck me so much, and it relates to what William was saying about this you know, this moment here, this eternity now. You can't get to beingness by becoming. That's what Helen said. There isn't any journey that will take us to where we are. I put that smack up in front of me where I sit all the time. And so that means, you know, everything's now. Everything is now. I don't have to, and I love what Livy says to me, who's looking for the edges? You're right. What's looking for the edge? It's, you know, if everything is one, there's nothing to be done. Oh, wow, I gotta, you know. If it don't fit, you must have quit. This is wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you. Richard.
First of all, I think what I love about exploring the illusory world is one of the things I've learned is we chose to come into this life to grow consciously, and we may have chosen to come in as a male because we needed that kind of conditioning in order to expand our conscience, or female, or whatever. And that's helped me. But I have a painting on my wall from ancient Egypt where the man is facing the woman and they're becoming one. So I do believe we came here in this current incarnation to experience being one sex or the other or both or whatever. So coming to the realization we're really one as a human being, one with everything and one within ourselves with everyone, I think is a major opening. Well, what I wanted to share was I noticed in the last few years on social media, there's been a change in the quality of helping wild animals. Initially, when I watched clips of that, people helping wild animals, they had to protect themselves from the wild animal. They had to go up with a screen or something so the wild animal wouldn't attack them while they're being helped. And then they would let them free, remove the barrier, and the wild animal would run off. And I thought I really enjoyed those videos. Very recently, I've seen videos that say a wild animal like an elephant or a zebra or a tiger, if their mate or cub is hurting, they're allowing people to walk up and attend to the injured animal peacefully. And I'm so loving and so caring. And I thought to myself, for me, it's an indication that the consciousness of the human race is rising because there's a communication and a trust between the animal and the human. The human is no longer seen as a threat. So they're allowing the human to help them, help their child or their partner or whatever. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. That seemed to fit right into the conversation we were having yesterday about not holding ourselves apart from dogs, and the communication and the awareness of the environment. So I appreciate that very much. And I saw one similar with stags or something. I watched them too, along with a lot of these rescue things. And now I want a donkey so badly right now because of Instagram. I can't tell you. It's like if I move right now, it's so that I could have a baby donkey, which this guy calls a bonky, and they are the cutest things. I have fallen in love with donkeys because of Instagram. And I'll know to feed them bananas. All right, William.
I love that, Richard, because I can see me as that wounded animal. That's, in a way, that's my mind allowing itself to be vulnerable and at one and allowing someone to love me, which is so fearful. I'm aware of so much resistance that I can't trust. And so even in my mode downness, I can sense my resistance. And just hearing you talk about it, oh, yes, I can do that too. Just surrender to my animalness, whatever. Anyway, I thank you for that.
I'm thinking we might finish this chapter today. Do you think we should finish reading it now? Okay. I'll keep going. So now it's the bold print. The objects and the subjects must be the same thing if they are in the same place. Oh, do you need Cindy to put it on the screen for you? Does everybody have the book? Subject and object cannot even be two things, because that would again imply that there is somewhere that the subjective self is missing or absent from. This means that everything we perceive as an object, separate from myself and different from me, cannot actually be so. All objects are not really objects, but are the subjective self appearing to be different. Do you want me to read that paragraph again now that everybody can see it?
Yes.
Okay. The objects and the subject must be the same thing if they are in the same place. Subject and object cannot even be two things, because that would again imply that there is somewhere that the subjective self is missing or absent from. This means that everything we perceive as an object, separate from myself and different from me, cannot actually be so. All objects are not really objects, but are the subjective self appearing to be different.
Katie Keating.
Appearing to be different from the self is not actually different.
I was in a meeting Tuesday with Jacqueline Eckert at Awakening Together, and she admitted to a personal pet peeve. And that's what this last line reminded me of. She said, A Course in Miracles does not say removing the blocks to love's presence. That's not the line. She says people for decades are misquoting that line. It's removing the blocks to the perception of love's presence. It is what it is. And it can't be otherwise. Yeah. Anyway, that's what came up. I'll tell you why I stepped away as soon as I turn off the video, the recording at the end of the meeting. As long as Ron is still still here. We've done an hour. Is that crazy? Does anyone have any final thoughts? Livy.
I was just thinking about this story that I heard Ram Dass tell about. There was in a country, and there was this this group of soldiers led by this really perceived bad man, the major or whatever, led his group of soldiers into this village and just started killing everyone. And he went into the temple, and there was a priest that was still alive in the temple, and most of his people and his monks had been murdered, and and he stayed, and this admiral went up to him and said, "Do you not realize that I could pull out my sword and stick it through you without blinking an eye?" And the priest looked at him and said, "Do you not realize that I can stand here and have you put your sword through me and not blink an eye?" And the soldier turned around and left. And I just have always loved that story. So just wanted to share that.
All right. I love us. I'm going to stop the recording now. We ended a chapter. I'll remember where to start next week. All right. Here we go.